Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we're going to go over section 7.1, array list. So be sure to have your notes with you. Be sure to have your repo opened up to section 7.1. Type in your name, period, and don't forget to click submit once you are done so you can get credit for this assignment. So on the last unit we covered arrays, and we know that arrays are able to hold multiple primitive types or class types, non-primitives, into one object. And we can actually call them by using the indices that start from 0 to the end. Array lists are going to work in a very similar manner. But there are some advantages on array lists, and we'll talk about them as we go through the lesson. So first, in order to be able to use array lists, we need to be able to import the class. Import Java util array list. And whenever we use the math class, it's automatically imported into Java, so we don't have to do the import. Whenever we do strings, automatically it's imported into Java, but array lists are not. The same way that the scanner class is not. So whenever we need to be able to get input from the user, we have to import the class. In the same way, we need to do the same thing with ArrayList. So there's going to be times that are going to be calling, and it's going to give you an error, and that's because you haven't done the import statement. And remember that it has to be before the class definition. So now let's go and create our first ArrayList. To create our first ArrayList, we are going to call constructor. First, we're going to declare it's going to be an array list. We need to be able to tell Java what type of objects we are going to be storing. And in array list, we can only store class data types, objects. We cannot store integers, booleans, any type of primitive types. We cannot be stored in array list. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the lesson. So in this case, let's go start by storing strings. Let's go store strings into the array list. Let's go and give it a name. So let's go say list. We're going to call the constructor, and that is the only way to be able to declare and initialize your array list. In arrays, we can actually do the braces and tell it what values we want in the array. In array list, we have to call our constructor. We're going to be telling Java what type of objects we are creating. And we don't need to tell Java how many are we going to store. In arrays, we need to be able to tell Java how many we're going to store ahead of time so it can create the spaces. With array lists, it's going to grow as we add more elements, or it's going to get smaller as we take away. So that is a big advantage of array lists. We can grow and condense as we need those objects, where in arrays, once you have a set of 7 elements, that's it. You cannot make it into an 8. You have to create a new array in order to be able to enlarge it. And now we can add objects. Now, if you have your notes for section 7.1, on the next page, you'll notice that there are different methods that you're going to be able to use. And this is what's given to you on the AP exam. On the AP exam, you are going to be able to have this with you, where it's going to tell you the methods that you are responsible for. Now, if we actually go and search for array list Java and just press enter, the first link will be the Oracle website that is going to provide you with all the methods that are in the array list. Notice that we have several constructors. We're just going to use the first one. Then we can actually tell the capacity if we need to. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then it gives you all the methods. We're going to be using the add method. There are two different ones, so they're overloaded. We are going to be using the get method. There's an index of, if we need to be able to find the location of an index of an object. We're not going to be using that one as much for ArrayList because it's not part of the APCSA. We are going to be using the remove. We are going to be using the, we can remove a specific object, or we can remove an object at a specific location. There's the size. There's a set that we're going to use. And that's about it. But the ArrayList has quite a few more that you are not going to be responsible for the APCSA. So therefore, we're just going to focus on the following. So let's go and start by adding objects. We are adding strings. So to add an object, whenever you had an array, it used to be list bracket and the index. Well, in ArrayList, it's going to be different. It's going to be list, then dot add. We're going to call the method add method. We're going to tell what object we need to add. In this case, we're going to add strings. And for purposes, we are going to be using cards. So let's go and use, let's add an ace first. And what's happening in our array, once we add one, it's going to add an ace, and it's going to give it index of 0. Then we're going to add, let's say, a king. And once you add a king, then it's going to expand your array list, and now it's going to give an index of 1. And last, let's go and add a queen. And if we add a queen, it's going to create another spot. It's going to increase the size, and it's going to be index of 2. And now we can print our array list. Now, one of the advantages is that whenever we want to be able to print the contents of an array list, we can just do system.out.println, and we can just say list. Where on arrays, it used to be able to give us the memory location because it didn't have a toString method. On ArrayList, it's going to print ace, king, and queen. If I want to be able to print one of them separately, so let's say I want to be able to print the one with index 1, to be able to access those objects, those elements, I can say list, where in arrays we have to use bracket 1. In ArrayList, we have to use that get method, and we have to tell it what location we want to be able, what index we want to be able to access, and I'm going to go and print it out. So it'll be system.out.print. And therefore, it should be able to print all 3, and then it's going to print the index 1, which is a king. Now, to be able to print the size of the array, let's go and print the size. So it says system.out.println and size of array. To be able to print it, notice that I'm calling it the size because we're going to be calling the size method. So the size method is going to tell us the number of elements in the array. So before it used to be dot length, Now for array list, it has to be list dot size. And let me make sure that I place a semicolon at the very end. And therefore, it should say the size of the array list should be 1, 2, 3 elements in there. So there should be 3. Let me make an extra space in there. So that is the add method. That is the get method, and that is the size method. So you need to be comfortable using the add method. We're going to be adding objects into the array list. We can print them by just using the name of the array list without having to go through a loop. You'll print it as in brackets. Then we can use that size is going to give us the length, well, not the length, but the size, how many elements are in the array. And now we have the get method that can print one at a time. Now that we have that get method, let's assume that we want to be able to print everything in uppercase. So therefore, I can say dot to uppercase. And now, because this is going to return the string, now this contains the string that's in the first index, then we can use all those methods that are associated with the object, which is to uppercase. So therefore, that should be able to print the word king in all uppercase. Now, if we want to be able to print the first 2 letters, then we can say toString, or no, substring, and we can, the first 2 letters will be from 0 to 2, correct? So therefore, this part is going to give us the string, then it's going to convert it to uppercase, and that once we have the uppercase, it's going to give us the first 2 letters, and therefore it should be a KI as we print it out. And now, what if I change it? What if I do substring? I want to do it first. What is the difference between those two? Is there a difference? No, correct. It will be still the same thing, except for I forgot to place my dot here, and I have 2 periods here. So now let's try once again. Right. So now what's the difference? In this case, we are getting the string, then we get the first 2 letters, and then we convert those 2 letters to uppercase. But the result is the same. So once we actually get the object, we can use any of the methods that are within the object. So let's say we want to be able to find out how many letters are in that string. Then we can say list.get1, and then we can say length, and that should give us KING. That should be able to give us a 4. Correct. So that's something to keep in mind, that once you have the object itself, we can use any of the methods within the object. So that is the add. Next will be the second add method that's going to that is going to take the index and then the object. So let's assume that I want to be able to add, we have ace, king, and jack. And I want to be able to add one more element. I want to be able to add a jack. And I'm going to add it to the first. So I'm going to insert list.add First, I need to tell Java where I want to add it. I want to be able to add it on index 1, and I want to add a jack. So what's happened, it's going to take a jack, it's going to insert, and it's going to shift everything up. So now we have index 3 for the queen, index 2 for the king, index 1 for the jack. So be ace, jack, king, and queen. And now what was on index 1 used to be king, but now it's a jack, and that's why it gives us 4. If I actually just print the element to uppercase, then it should give us a jack now, where it used to be a king before. So we did both add methods. One of the things is you have to be able to remember that you are adding on top, and if you're going to insert, it shifts everything over to one side, and that's a good way to represent is by doing think of the playing cards. The next one is get, we've done. The next one, let's go and do remove first. If I want to be able to remove the queen, now the queen, I can say list.remove, and for the queen is on index number 4. Actually, let me remove the king, which is in index number 2. The remove is going to remove it from your array list, and now we used to have 4 elements, and now we'll only have 3. So therefore, the king got removed, the queen gets shifted down, so now we have only 3 elements into the array list. Questions? Something to keep in mind is that whenever you remove a card, you can still use it. It's going to return it to you. So notice that in your definition, whenever you remove it, it's going to return the element. So in this case, there's an E in here because it's going to give it back to you. And you can do whatever you want with this element. So you can print it out if you want. You can send it to another method. So now that I removed the king, I can just print it out if I want. So therefore, right before I print the list, right above, it should print the element that got removed, which is the king. So notice I removed it, but it returns it so that you can still use it. Now you can even use it to be able to add it back into the array. So onto the array list. So if I want to be able to actually, instead of saying, I'm going to remove it, but I'm going to add it back. So I say list.add, and then I'm going to add it to the index 0. And many times when your multiple choice is going to ask you, okay, what is going to be, they're going to give you the following code, and they're going to tell you what's going to be the end result. Well, it used to be ace, king, jack, queen, and jack, correct? Ace, king, queen, and jack. Oh, no, jack was on index number 1. So that's how it used to be, correct? If I omit this, then it should give me what we have before, which is ace, jack, king, and queen. But now, if I have the following line of code, what is going to be printed? right? I'm removing my index number 2, which is my king. Then I'm going to insert it back on index number 0, and it's going to shift everything up. And therefore it should be king, ace, jack, and queen. King, ace, jack, and queen. So that's something that you need to be able to remember, is that whenever you remove, you are going to remove it, but you're still able to use it. Questions? Now the last one is the set. The set is going to replace the element. So let's go and simplify a little bit so we don't have too many concepts in here. Let's just go and add the jack at the very end. We have your ace, index 0. Then we have our king. Then we have our queen. And last we have our jack. So let's say that I'm going to have a, where's my joker? Let's go and say I have a 2 of diamonds. And I'm going to insert on index, I'm going to set, so I'm going to replace the king with a 2. So therefore, I am going to use my set method. So list dot set, and I'm going to replace it with a, I need to be able to place that index first. 2, and what is the object I'm going to place? I'm going to place a 2. Well, actually, I want to place it on index 1. That's what we talked about, right? So therefore, I'm going to take my 2. I'm going to replace the king. And therefore, I should have ace, 2, queen, and jack. Ace, 2, queen, and jack. Now, something to keep in mind is that your set method is going to return the element itself. So therefore, I'm going to add it to the very end. So I can print it if I want, or if I want, I can say, let's add. I am replacing the king, but I'm going to add it to the very end. So now the length of my array list is going to be 4. And if I run it, it should say ace, 2, queen, jack, and king. Ace, 2, queen, jack, and king. So those are all the methods that you're responsible for on your AP exam for ArrayList. Now, we can add other type of objects. So for example, if you notice on your files that we have in here, we have song. So if we want, we can actually create an array list of songs. So once again, we have song is the type of object that we're going to have. Now let's call it a list. And now let's go and add the first one. So it's going to be list.add. Now, because that's an object, we need to be able to create that new object. So it's going to be new song. And let's go and look at our constructors. Let's see how many constructors we have in the class. We can create a song that's non, and 0 by calling our default constructor, or we can give it a title, the artist, and the length. So let's go and use the regular constructor, the non, and 0. Let's go and say list.add a new song, and let's create a song. So let's go and say, come fly with me. And who sings this? Frank Sinatra. And let's say the length of the song is just 100 seconds. And let's go and add a second one. So let's add a new song. Let's go and call our second constructor. Let's do a Billie Holiday, but Beautiful by Billie Holiday. And let's say this one is 150 seconds. And now we can actually just print them by saying system.out.print. So I can type correctly. And we can just say list. And therefore, it's going to call that toString whenever we print, and it's going to print the following information: the title by artist and then the length. And that's going to be for each of them in brackets. Where before we had to do a for loop to be able to print each of the objects, now we can just print it. And notice that it's missing a space after seconds. But now we know that we can actually go back into our song toString and place an additional space after second to be able to adjust how it gets printed. And now we should be able to see an additional space after the 150. So what if I want to be able to print the second song, but I just want to be able to print the title? So I'm going to do that. Before it used to be bracket, and the second song will be index 1. That was the case with arrays. ArrayList, you have to use the method .get. The index 1 will be the second song. And to be able to print the title, if we go back into our song class, we know that our song has a variable name called title, but it's private, which means that we cannot access it outside of this class. So therefore, we're going to have to use our get title method to be able to access. And now we can access the title of the second song of index 1. Come fly with me. If we need to be able to print the artist name, we can just say get artist or get length for the length. Any questions? If I want to be able to add, we can add an additional. If I want to be able to, let's go and replace the first one with Nina Simone. So let's say list. I want to do the set method, index 0. I'm going to replace it. And new role coming. I need to create the song, correct? It's not just the title. We need to create an object and store it. So therefore, it's going to be new song. The 3 arguments that we need to say is the title, new world coming, Nina Simone. Then the length, let's go and say it's going to be 250 seconds. I'm missing my parentheses to go to enclose. And now I'm going to replace, and they're going to return this song that's none, but we don't need to do anything with it. I'm just going to print the title. I'm just going to print the list first. And it's going to print all 3 songs. We only have 3 because it got replaced. And the first one should be Nina Simone, new role coming. Correct? Any questions? And the last thing that we need to cover is, let's go and create one last array list but we want to be able to store integers. I want to say int and let's go and add add 5. So it's going to add the number 5. Let's create another one. Let's add 7. And let's go and run it. And it should be 5, 7. Error. Requires reference found in found unexpected data type. That's right. ArrayList can only store non-primitives. Can only store objects. So we need to be able to find a way to be able to store numbers in there, integers. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to call and store integer as a class. And if you guys remember, we cover integer on unit 2. We have wrapper classes. Remember that we skipped this? It's because we actually don't use it until we actually get to our ArrayList. There are several ways to be able to create an integer. An integer is a class that will allow us to be able to wrap the ints into an integer class so we can use them. And before, in order to be able to store integers into our ArrayList, we actually had to call the constructor that was a new integer and then place the number that we wanted to, such as the following. We have to install add the same way that we did add the song. We have to be new integer and then the 5. And we will do the same thing for this one. New integer and then the 7. And now we should be able to run it, and we should be able to have a 5 and a 7. But we didn't print it now. So let's go and just print the list. And now I should be able to print a 5 and a 7. Correct? Well, but then came Java version 5. And starting on version 5, because they were doing this so often, that they made it easier for us to be able to add integers, and they did something that we call auto-boxing. Auto-boxing means that they automatically is going to convert into an integer. Without us having to do the following, we can just say 5. We can just say 7. But you still need to be able to define it that there are integers, the class, not the int, into the ArrayList. But it will work the same way. That means that it's going to be auto-box. Automatically, we are going to create and wrap it and place that int 5 into the class integer as an object and place it. So what's inside the ArrayList is a integer, not an int, 5. And if we actually just, let's say I want to add both, and say system.out.println, and I'm going to add list.get 0 plus list.get 1, and I print it out. And actually, let me just make a variable first. Let's go and say int sum equals, and I'm going to add those two, and I print out. Then it will automatically add them, and it should give me sum is 12, correct? So that is automatically unboxing it. So when we have the autoboxing and unboxing, Java, before, in order to do this step, we had to use the int value method. So refer back to your 2.7 notes. Before Java version 5, we could not do this. Before, we actually had to be able to convert them into int value, the integers, but we no longer have to do that any longer. Now, Java automatically places them to an integer and then takes them out automatically without having been asked to do any of the work. On your AP exam, you do need to be able to be familiar with the following methods. That there's going to be times that they're going to be asking you which is autoboxing and which is unboxing. Autoboxing is whenever you don't have to go through the following definition, which is here. We don't need to be able to convert them into an integer. We automatically are converting them. That's autoboxing. Unboxing is when you have the integer and automatically gets converted to an int. We take it out of the box. But we don't have to worry about doing that any longer in Java. It automatically will do it for us. We don't need to do the int value. It will automatically do it for us, but you do need to be familiar with it for about 1 or 2 questions of your AP exam of multiple choice. So this concludes the lesson for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.